Hi. I just like to say good evening, and my name is Keith Mack. I am a retired OBGYN and anesthesiologist. I often refer to myself as a gynaecologiologist, but people look at me and think I'm a little bit nuts, which I may be. Anyway, tonight, you may wonder why I'm in the kitchen. I'm wondering the same thing myself. I'm going to prepare for you my world-famous dish called the bean thing. So I hope you'll enjoy this preparation. We do want to be very exact with everything that we do, and I will explain every step as we go along, as I best remember it as a 91-year-old retired man. Thank you for listening. Okay, almost every meal that you will prepare in life has a substance called ingredients. I'm not sure we understand that, and I say, hey Siri, define ingredients for me. Any of the foods or substances that are combined to make a particular dish. Well, I used to date a particular dish, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here. Anyway, so I'm not sure exactly what ingredients mean, so we'll just refer to these things as stuff, okay? For the bean thing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of stuff. As you can see, some of them are the same here, here, and here, and here. So we'll start with hamburger first. Now this is really a very tricky one because you may see on the shelf 80, 20. 80 means that it has 80% one substance, and 20 means it has another substance. But many times the grocer may put them on the shelf upside down, at which times you will have 20 of one substance and 80 of another. So you want to be very careful as you pick out your burger. So, okay, we take our burger first, and we pour a little bit of olive oil in a big pan, and it's exactly 4 to 10 teaspoonsful.
Exactly.
And with your hamburger, you want to have it exactly between 1 and 2 pounds somewhere. And you take a glob and you break it up and throw it into the pan. Okay, this is essential. It has to go into the pan. And this pan has to hold just so much of everything. Okay, so between 1 and 2 pounds somewhere. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is the onion. Now, my mother, I need to mention, my mother never, did I mention it already? My mother never used a recipe. Oh, I think I said that, so everything is done by hearsay, so this is hearsay. So you take a scalpel and you cut the onion in even pieces, okay? Now,
why do they have to be even, Keith?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people ask, and I really don't know either. But the only thing I can think of is, in case you need to put it back together, they're going to fit, you know? But that's just my own thinking. So anyway, we throw these precise, evenly cut onions into the whole glob with everything else. Everybody should have a stove in their kitchen. I don't know how many do and how many don't, but I had an old stove and I liked it real well, and had a repairman come out and he said that the oven was out. And I said, no, it's right here. It's been here all the time. But he insisted that it was out, so I bought a new stove. Anyway, this is my new stove, and this is GE, whatever that means. So, and you have to, there it goes. So you have to have that blue light, blue flame, and you throw it here. Now, very precisely, you dump all of the onion in there and kind of stir it all up. Now these things need to be spiced and taken care of that way very easily. So you put in a handful of sugar or salt. I'm sorry, don't put sugar. It doesn't work. So just put in a handful of salt. And with the burger, and incidentally, you can use Impossible Burger, which works very well. And with Impossible Burger, you really don't have to stop and think whether it's 80-20 because it's all the same. And that works very nice. Pepper is always good. And then we always throw in a little Majorca. And you do this until it's done, whatever it takes to have it done, whatever done means to you. I don't know. Anyway, so we let that cook for a little while. And then we go to our other ingredients here.
You mean stuff, Keith.
Hmm?
You mean stuff.
We go to our stuff. This stuff is green beans. And you pour the juice into a red cup. Now you can actually use cups of any color, but I use red because I have a red cutting board, I guess is one reason.
Oh, no.
And then you pour it all over yourself. Okay. Then we have...
more red stuff.
And it's called Italian recipe, and it is stewed tomatoes. Now the reason I use Italian mixture is because I used to live near Venice, and I think that makes as much sense as picking green beans out of a field. So that's why we do it that way. Now, what we're going to do next, what we're going to do is when we add everything together, we're going to stir it in very thoroughly, and then we're going to allow it to boil. Now, I think everybody understands what boiling is, but if you don't, the barometric pressure of the stuff has to warm up, and so the molecules get larger and they get greater barometric pressure than the atmosphere around us, and it produces bubbles.
Science lesson from Keith.
Bubbles are the fun part about boiling. And once you have bubbles, then you know you have boiling. So anyway, we are ready to add other stuff. It doesn't really matter if you put the beans in first or if you put the tomatoes in first. But you always want to make sure that you put one or the other in first. And
Chandler, you stuck that.
then you stir it in. Man, it looks great, doesn't it? It looks like beans and...
It looks like it's already ready to eat, Keith.
Yeah. Then if you have used the beans first, then obviously there's only one choice left. You have to use the tomatoes. But remember, these are Italian, and that has a lot of spices with it, and it should be pretty good. You don't have to chop up tomatoes or anything like that.
Keith, they called for 2 cans of each. Why don't you put the cans in there too?
Well, and that's one of the misconceptions that people have when it says 2 cans of something in a recipe. What it is actually referring to is just the substance that's within the cans. It took me a long time to understand that, but once I did, it made cooking a lot easier because, you know, cans just don't do well in a recipe like this. But, so, now, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this, well, first of all, now going back to the red cup, we have bean juice. So we'll do enough of that so we can bring it to a boil. Interestingly enough, if you live in areas above 6,000 feet, many things won't boil at a high enough temperature to cook things. And I think most people know that, but that's just an interesting little sideline I decided to throw in. Once it's boiled, then we will turn it down and allow it to simmer for an hour to 6, 7 hours, whatever turns you on. I guess a lot of how long it takes you to cook it depends on how soon company's coming. But I want to add, if you don't have friends, you can always freeze it and save it till later until you do.
And I'll put in here that everyone that watching is automatically our friends.
After it's cooked for at least an hour, then I usually top it off with ketchup, depending on, you want this pretty exact in measurements, you use kind of like this, you know. And it really turns out pretty nice. So I think the important thing in learning to cook without a recipe is that you make things exactly the same every time. And sometime I would like to try that. There, folks, world famous bean thing, which you probably have never heard of before, but you should never forget.
And here's the finished product of Keith Mack's famous bean thing. I had to get world famous. I had to get Keith's biggest fork that he owns. And let's try it. Delicious.